debt above what we can service. Taxes haven't gone up since, Reagan restored them in his first term. Because we believe that this is to our betterment, simply because the values of stocks don't go down, while of course the value of the dollar is in perpetual, free fall. Because we believe wrongly that if the stock market is sustained artificially by the Federal Reserve pouring money into circulation this way, we think we're all right. We've taken our eyes off the ball. We're not following the issues. We're not paying attention to the meat of the matter, which is that all this while, since even before Reagan took office, we were actually witnessing our entering into the phases of terminal failure. And as this sum of debt escalates at an ever-escalating rate, staying on the good side of it just means that we are barely able to afford to continue servicing the escalating sum of debt. So none of this is evidence of our betterment. And of course, because they pour this money into circulation and it's available to speculation on the stock market, because the stock market is ostensibly evidence of our prosperity, we are investing this further debt in the highly improbable area of purported stocks and securities, which not only can't save us, but are even more likely to take us down when the artificial maintenance of purported securities prices or values ultimately fails when the curtain drops, which of course is inevitable.
I had a friend who was a bond trader at Merrill Lynch in the 1970s. He had a job as a train conductor at night because he had 3 kids and couldn't support them on what a bond trader made. By 1986, he was making millions of dollars and thought it was because he was smart.
The highest order of business before the nation is to restore our economic prosperity.
In 1981, President Ronald Reagan chose as Treasury Secretary the CEO of the investment bank Merrill Lynch, Donald Regan.
Wall Street and the president do see eye to eye. I've talked to many leaders of Wall Street. They all say we're behind the president 100%.
The Reagan administration, supported by economists and financial lobbyists, started a 30-year period of financial deregulation. In 1982, the Reagan administration deregulated savings and loan companies, allowing them to make risky investments with their depositors' money. By the end of the decade, hundreds of savings and loan companies had failed. This crisis cost taxpayers $124 billion and cost many people their life savings.
Of course, I dispute the cited figure of what this cost the taxpayers on 2 counts, basically. Number one, unfortunately, because this documentary was done without an understanding of the linkage between these consequences and the underlying fundamental obfuscation of the currency, they're not even citing all the costs which relate to this artificial maintenance of falsified values or costs of purported securities. Now, if you recall, Reagan was elected after famously turning to Carter and denouncing the $150 billion of federal debt that Carter had accumulated over 4 years as, quote, unforgivable, unquote. At that very time, Reagan had my proof, not only of inevitable failure, but of singular solution to the underlying obfuscation of the currency, which would result in inevitable failure. He had a plan, which I prescribed during the campaign in 1979, for immediate conversion of this system from usury in a mathematically perfected economy, not only immediately, but virtually without cost. Why did he do nothing about this? And what is the real issue here? What is the real extent of these crimes? Why are these crimes and our complaints against them are one thing, but to prove that these crimes result in terminal failure and that there is one and one only solution for the categoric faults of this system of exploitation which has been imposed upon us. To prove that and to be met with evasion implies, well, it doesn't just imply, it proves one thing only. And so the real story here is that Reagan went on basically ensuring that all his buddies who put him into office could loot the nation in its final days. And so this is the real thing for us to understand, is that when we have a government which must be a joint partner in the persistence of this system of exploitation, you get nothing but this. Now, I'm not saying that I know somehow that Reagan was just that evil, but yet how dedicated to principle could he possibly have been to simply override this fact of prospective monetary failure and singular solution, to instead enable all these people who are gutting the nation of not only its wealth, but its very opportunity to prosper, its very opportunity to reap just reward for production.
It may be the biggest bank heist in our history.
Thousands of savings and loan executives went to jail for looting their companies. One of the most extreme cases was Charles Keating.
Mr. Keating, you got a word?
In 1985, when federal regulators began investigating him, Keating hired an economist named Alan Greenspan. In this letter to regulators, Greenspan praised Keating's sound business plans and expertise and said he saw no risk in allowing Keating to invest his customers' money. Keating reportedly paid Greenspan $40,000. Charles Keating went to prison shortly afterwards. As for Alan Greenspan, President Reagan appointed him chairman of America's central bank, the Federal Reserve. Greenspan was reappointed by Presidents Clinton and George W. Bush. During the Clinton administration, deregulation continued under Greenspan, and Treasury Secretaries Robert Rubin, the former CEO of the investment bank Goldman Sachs, and Larry Summers, a Harvard economics professor.
The financial sector, Wall Street, being powerful, having lobbies, having lots of money, step by step captured the political system, both on the Democratic and the Republican side.
On the contrary, they're not step by step capturing the political system. It's because they'd already captured the political system clear back in 1912. That they are able to do this because they have multiplied all of our wealth into their possession, because they've dispossessed us of so much of our production, that they are financially able to buy whoever they need for whatever purposes. And so your government is bought and sold. It doesn't matter if you live in the United States. It doesn't matter what country you live in the world. Why are all these people now in all these countries so suffering under this obfuscation of the currency, so unemployed, so hopeless is the future for them that they are revolting throughout the world? This is a consequence of the obfuscation of the currency, and the reason that these governments exist is to exploit them. This is what's happened all across the world, and this is what is happening now, is that we are acting, people, at least in some places, are rising up against the consequences of injustice. But this exercise in itself is futile. It won't lead to representation unless we recognize our problems and their only solution. So this is what's important for us to do now. Unless we understand solution, we will get from government, purported representative government, we will get yet another purported solution. They will rename the same kind of currency the Amero, or they will create an international currency under international governments, which are not the result of a mandate of the people anywhere in the world. They instead are fabrications of the present usurpations of government across the world. So this is why rising against these things, of course, is essential, but it's futile unless we understand the obfuscation of the currency and why government and this purported financial industry, which isn't an industry at all, why they are inseparable partners in our oppression.
By the late 1990s, the financial sector had consolidated into a few gigantic firms, each of them so large that their failure could threaten the whole system. And the Clinton administration helped them grow even larger.
Clinton, of course, had likewise received my proposition, my mathematic proof of inevitable failure and singular solution, and a singular means of converting any system of exploitation into mathematically perfected economy. He never even responded. However, I did receive 8 Christmas cards from the Clinton family, 1 or 2 of which I might have opened. The rest I either gave away, some of which I still possess. He likewise referred to my work, nonetheless, in one of his first State of the Union addresses, in which he proudly boasted to have accomplished something which before was thought to be, quote, mathematically impossible, unquote. Well, this is not, in fact, actually true. I didn't actually propose that it was mathematically impossible to balance the federal budget, but neither did Mr. Clinton actually accomplish balancing the federal budget. On the contrary, it was improprieties of bookkeeping, largely stealing from other funds and whatnot, by which he claims this. And there's a long story to that. I'm not going to go into it now. Nonetheless, Clinton could have saved the country as well. But who do these people always represent? This is the pattern that's evident here. Why would a president of a country such as the United States, who serves his people, ever once resist for even a few minutes the proposition, for instance, that ultimately we pay $1,000 a year for a $100,000 house with a 100-year lifespan, as opposed to paying $1,000 a month for it, 12 times as much. We would be 12 times as liquid if we did the only just thing, which allows us to trade our production for like volumes of production of others. So what has been done here is accomplished merely by evasion. Clinton had no argument against mathematically perfected economy. No one has proven in history that there is more than one integral solution for the categoric faults of any prospective monetary thesis. On the contrary, he simply persisted or perpetuated this system of exploitation at our